Good afternoon and welcome to LVS Perspectives. I can't believe, where has this week gone since we were last sat here? So today we introduced Tracy Hannigan, who's a sleep specialist. So I'm going to go straight over to Tracy because I know that she's got a slide that explains who she is and what she does. So thank you, Tracy, for being with us today.
Thank
And
you very
handing over
much.
to you.
Thank
Any
you very much.
questions? Any questions that you've got, if you want to email them in, you can go via the chat or email them to me. I have my email on my phone and we will ask the questions at the end of the presentation.
Brilliant. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen and get started. Great. Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Tracy Hannigan and I am an osteopath and sleep coach. And I want to come and speak to you today about sleep issues as they affect particularly older teens and adults. It's certainly a hot topic at the moment. Ever since the first lockdown happened, people have been struggling with altered schedules, stress affecting their sleep. It's kind of put sleep issues back into the forefront of everybody's mind. And I like to frame this talk around ways to approach treating insomnia and helping people with insomnia, but from the perspective of people who do have insomnia, but as well as people who don't have insomnia, because we will all experience sleep issues at some point in our life. And how we deal with those issues can nudge us into returning to more restorative, healthy sleep, or can nudge us down the road into insomnia. So that is going to be the kind of the framing for this particular talk. In order to provide a little bit of context, the suggestions that I'm going to give you, because they are different from some of the things that you may kind of read online, I need to just give you a really basic background in the sleep control systems. I call it the sleep control panel. The first component of the sleep control panel is what we call sleep drive. Now, sleep drive is a biochemical process. It starts when you wake up in the morning. So if you imagine your sleep drive is like a balloon, and your balloon is completely deflated in the morning when you get up because you've been sleeping all night. Being awake and being active are the two things that fill your sleep drive balloon. So as you go about your day, as you're physically active, the longer you're awake, the bigger your sleep drive balloon is. The tighter the balloon gets, the fuller the balloon gets. And then when you go to sleep, that sleep drive balloon begins to empty out over the course of the night. The circadian system is one that everybody would be familiar with if they've ever experienced jet lag. The circadian system interacts with the sleep drive system, but its main function is to allow us to fall asleep and wake up at kind of the right time, in big quotes, the right time. What happens between the sleep drive system and the circadian system during the day is that the circadian system actually helps us stay up. We tend to think of it as the thing that puts us to sleep. If we constantly built up sleep drive all day long, we would slowly feel more and more sleepy throughout the day, but that's not what happens. We tend to have a busy, active day, and then at a certain point at night, we get sleepy. And that's because the circadian system all day has been sending little signals to combat the sleep drive. And eventually it gets to the point where it needs to switch off, and then the sleep drive takes over and we fall asleep. The arousal system is the most important component of our sleep. It's a very functional, very survival necessary feature of our brain that we have a very functional arousal system. If you were sleeping in a cave and you were really tired because you'd been out hunting all day, it wouldn't be very helpful for your sleep drive system or your circadian system to be the most important thing if a bear came into the cave. So your arousal system can completely override your sleep drive and can completely override the signals being sent to your circadian system. And this is the target for behavioral type therapies for insomnia. So that's just a background because I'm going to reference these systems as we go through. Some of the suggestions I'm going to give are going to make sense because you may have seen them before, but particularly the ones that sound, wow, like that'd be really hard to do. Why do you want me to do that? This is the context behind that. So when it comes to teenagers in particular, I remember in my teen years, my mother thought I had terrible priorities because I wanted to stay up all night. We didn't have video games back then. We didn't have the internet back then, or mobile phones even. But the idea was I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do because I need to go to bed because I'm having a hard time getting up in the morning. And that was me being lazy, right? This was the attitude about teen sleep back in the 70s. And the research has come an awful long way. Teen sleep is different from adult sleep. And it is, people progressively get less sleep as they get older, as they move through puberty. And the timing of when that sleep happens is very, very different from when it happens for adults. So the average teen needs between 9 and 11 hours. There's no magic number, just like for adults, there's no magic number 8. And sometimes looking to get that magic number can actually cause trouble. The amount of sleep somebody needs is enough sleep to be able to fall asleep within 15 minutes, maybe wake up a couple times briefly in the night, and to feel refreshed the next day. And that number is going to be different for everybody. So this is a really big average of 9 to 11 hours. Now, teenagers going to school have to be up in order to kind of fit into the school day at a certain time. And for their biological rhythms, it doesn't match up very well. So if a teen needs 11 hours of sleep or even 9 hours of sleep, and they have to get up at 6 o'clock to go to school, it's virtually impossible for them to get the amount of sleep that they need to feel refreshed when they wake up. And that is because their sleep system is functioning very differently during puberty. So two things happen. When I talked about the sleep drive balloon, ours fills up at a pretty consistent rate. Theirs fills up at a pretty consistent rate as well. However, it fills up more slowly. So they have to be awake longer in order to become equally as sleepy as an adult, even if they were on the same circadian rhythm and we all fell asleep at the same, or aim to fall asleep at the same time. It would take them longer to get tired, get sleepy enough to sleep. The biggest change, though, that makes it really difficult for teenagers is the circadian rhythm changes that they go through. We have something called a dim light melatonin onset. That happens a few hours before bedtime. It is cued by the circadian system and happens pretty consistently as long as you're in a rhythm where you're waking up at a certain time and you tend to go to bed at a certain time and you eat at a certain time in the morning and you experience light at a certain time of day. For teenagers, that dim light melatonin onset simply happens later, regardless of what the light is like. And so they cannot fall asleep at the same time that we want them to fall asleep so that they get enough sleep to get up for school. It's biologically very, very difficult for them to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit later why trying to force that can actually create different kinds of sleeping trouble and what we can do to try to help them maximize their sleep. And these tips are perfect for adults too. So why do these changes happen? In terms of an evolutionary perspective, people don't know exactly why. There are some theories out there, but it is directly related to the changes in the brain that happen when teens are going through puberty. So it's not an age-related thing, it is a puberty-related thing. So children who grow up who have a condition where they don't necessarily go through puberty in the same way, they don't experience the same kind of circadian rhythm changes as teens who don't have those conditions. So this kind of leads to a kind of a perfect storm problem. Through no fault of their own, they're going to be experiencing chronic social jet lag. It would be like asking us to get up at 4:30 every morning for, I don't know, 5-6 years and never adapting to the fact that we are getting up at 4:30 in the morning, or like moving three time zones. So moving somewhere into the middle of the Atlantic. It's very difficult to get enough sleep to be able to get up for the time that they're socially required to get up. Combine that with the lifestyle issues that affect teens these days didn't affect sort of me as a teenager when I was a teen, because these days, lifestyle habits such as, if you could see me, I'd be waving my mobile phone. We didn't have these. Teenagers can literally take their social life to bed with them. And this has significant potential consequences of exacerbating the sleep problem that already inherently exists because of this tension between what they need to do and what their biology is telling them to do. And a lot of the times people, they look at teens and they're like, oh, they're grumpy and moody and irritable. And it's no wonder, because they are chronically sleep deprived. And we're going to talk about some ways to try to reduce that as much as possible. And it's going to tie into a little bit of this lifestyle habits. I'm just going to. Okay. So how can we maximize the opportunity that they do have to sleep? Now, some of these will seem really familiar, but I'm going to backfill them with some interesting information that's going to create a little context. So reducing bright light as much as possible in the evening. That's good for everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a teenager or an adult. Now, there's a lot of emphasis placed on blue light, but bright light of any color can be a problem. So you can have a blue light filter on your phone, if you like, but if it's bright and it's right in your face, it can still be considered a problem. Teenagers, particularly older teenagers, because they have developed physiologically to a certain point, even with their neurology, their nervous system, they are more sensitive to blue light than adults are. And there are a few different reasons for this, but the most interesting one is, you know how you get older and your teeth get a little bit yellow? It's not the only thing in our body that gets a little bit yellow, and yellow will filter out the blue. So we are less sensitive to the impact of blue light on our circadian system. So reducing bright light, particularly bluey types of light, starting as early as possible in the evening, will help them maximize the melatonin onset that triggers their sleep, to make it as productive as it possibly can be. It will never be at the time that we think is reasonable, but it is biologically whatever it is for them, to maximize it as much as possible and to avoid delaying it in order to maximize their sleep. And you might think that bright morning light would be a great way to help somebody wake up. The interesting thing about this, and the same thing is true for adults, one part of the circadian system and one feature that happens when we are actually sleeping is that we hit a core body temperature low. It's about 1 degree lower than our normal core body temperature, about 3 hours before we wake up. If you expose somebody to bright light before that point, it reinforces their existing circadian rhythm. So you can't kind of nudge somebody for 5 days for the school week by blasting them with bright light that early, because their natural rhythm is going to have them waking up more than 3 hours later than they typically have to wake up. And so, if you ever decide to do shift work, or if you have another situation where you suddenly have to start waking up much earlier than usual, that's why they suggest backing into it kind of early, like wake up a little bit earlier, a little bit earlier, a little bit earlier. It's partly because it makes it easier, but it also helps avoid exposing yourself to bright light before that. It will make it much more difficult to adapt if you expose yourself before that low point, which is about 3 hours, again, 3 hours before your usual wake up time, because that just tells your circadian rhythm we have to stick to our plan. It does not help it adapt. Stress and social life management is probably the most complicated thing on this slide, because it's going to look different for everybody. Everybody's stressors are going to be different. Everybody's preferred and more effective social and stress management techniques are going to be different. But tying into this arousal system, lowering people's stress levels during the day is helpful at night, even if you're not aware that you're going to sleep with things in your brain. One of the features of things like insomnia, for example, is a level of chronic hyperarousal. And it doesn't happen just at night to keep you awake, it happens during the day as well. So stress management in general can help short-term sleeplessness problems from developing into insomnia. And kind of tying into the stress piece and the light piece and relating it to school scenario, completing schoolwork as early in the day as you can to help allow for a bit of a buffer zone at night. It's difficult when kids are under high stress or they're preparing for exams, or they've got a long paper that's due. They may have to, they just have to do what they do. But in an ideal situation, learning how to time block, learning how to be more productive with the time that they have during the day may allow them to have a bigger buffer zone in the evening. And even if they are on a screen doing something, it might be something that's a little bit more relaxing and a little bit less stressful and consequential. That might not only help their night's sleep that night, but may help overall improve the quality of their sleep over time. So what happens if these sorts of things aren't enough? Everybody suffers from short-term sleeplessness sometimes. You have life stresses. We have exams for young people and old people like myself. We have COVID. We have job turbulence. All of these things can impact our sleep in the short term. Now, what then happens is we can return to normal sleep and healthy sleep after this short-term sleeplessness. Or some people are prone to developing insomnia as a result of this short-term sleeplessness. So it's almost like it becomes an entity in and of itself, even after the issue has passed. Insomnia, by way of a quick definition, is having difficulty falling asleep, waking up in the night and having difficulty falling asleep, or waking up too early and in a way that affects your daytime functioning. And the other important thing to know about insomnia itself, insomnia as a sleep disorder is one of the only sleep disorders that does not cause sleepiness. So when I'm talking about insomnia, I'm not talking about people who are literally falling asleep during the daytime during quiet activities. If somebody is falling asleep during quiet activities during the daytime, like sitting at a stoplight or talking quietly on the sofa with a friend, any scenario that's not too stimulating, if people are falling asleep, they need to be referred to a GP and they need a sleep study because it's very likely to be a different kind of sleep disorder. Insomnia is characterized by that hyperarousal, that arousal system overriding the sleep drive and circadian signals that keep your sleep system working the way you want it to. And that affects, again, both nighttime and daytime. And it's this hyperarousal that is the thing that will turn short-term sleeplessness into longer-term sleeplessness. So how does that hyperarousal happen? It happens as a result of the thoughts and the behaviors that we develop around sleep that either can return us to good sleep or cause a problem. And the easiest way to explain how that works is to jump into talking about the proven ways of combating insomnia. These things fall under the general category of cognitive behavioral therapy techniques for insomnia. These are not sleep hygiene things that you would necessarily get on the GP handout. They are evidence-based. There's over 30 years of evidence, hundreds of randomized controlled trials. You can look them up yourself on PubMed. They are over 80% successful in people for whom they're suited. There are different techniques that are suited to different people. Some are not suited to everybody. Something you can ask your healthcare practitioner about, but I wanted to touch on all of these so that you be familiar with them and familiar with the concepts, because even if you don't have insomnia or your team doesn't have insomnia, if you have a stressful event that affects your sleep, you might be able to tap this information to reframe how you think about your sleep to help protect the sleep that you have and prevent yourself from developing insomnia in the first place. So these are not sleep hygiene tips. As much as the hot bath and the cup of chamomile tea might be, they don't address the hyperarousal component that creates the insomnia. And unfortunately, because these techniques are not widely available to people because there are not a lot of practitioners that do it, there are more people that need it than there are people who can show people how to do it. So people will try and try and try and try lots and lots and lots and lots of different things that don't get to the root of it. And they start to feel like their sleeping system is broken. They start to feel really hopeless about it. They start to feel very anxious about it. And addressing that anxiety is actually part of the process of going through these behavioral techniques. So they fall into 4 buckets. One is called stimulus control. One is called sleep efficiency or sleep consolidation training, mindfulness and relaxation training, and addressing people's unhealthy, unhelpful beliefs about sleep and the consequences of being awake when you don't want to be awake. So I'm just going to go through those. And I'll be talking a bit about how they work with the sleep system. This is why I wanted to create that context. Because if I tell you, oh, you should probably consider doing this, and it's a really difficult thing to do, as adult learners, we want to know why. It gives us a reason and it hooks us into a justification for why you're being asked to do it. So the first one is stimulus control, and this works directly with the arousal system. So what happens before people have long-term sleep trouble is that we have a relationship with our bed. That's the place we sleep. So we haven't had sleep trouble up to this point, say. So the relationship is bed, sleep, bed, sleep, bed, sleep, bed, sleep for years and years and years. So we have a short-term sleeplessness problem. And what we tend to do is go to bed early. We tend to stay in bed at night when we've woken up, and we try to make ourselves go back to sleep, which it's counterproductive, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Or we stay in bed late. So we're spending a larger proportion of time in our bed while we're awake. We're disrupting that relationship that says the bed is the place to sleep. And we are replacing it with sometimes we sleep here, but sometimes we lay here being really anxious. Or sometimes we lay here being worried about our exams. Or sometimes we worry about COVID. Or sometimes we worry about having an argument with our spouse. We start to associate all of those kinds of feelings with laying in bed, which is really, really detrimental to people's sleep. So stimulus control is about reversing that process by changing our behavior when we are having periods of wakefulness or periods of time when we're experiencing stress in bed. It strengthens the bed-sleep relationship, and it reduces the bed-wakefulness relationship. And essentially what you do is don't go to bed until you're sleepy. So don't try to catch up on sleep by going to bed early, because if you're having difficulty sleeping already, you may be laying there for a couple of hours. So wait till you're sleepy. The most important one is if you wake in the night and you're tossing and turning and you haven't gone back to sleep in, say, 10 minutes or so, get up, leave the room, go and do something enjoyable. And you might wonder, well, what kind of thing would that be? Reading, anything kind of quiet and enjoyable to bring your arousal level down, because the reason you can't go back to sleep is because the arousal is overriding your sleep drive. So you want to stop worrying about sleep in that moment. Go do something enjoyable, bring your arousal down until the sleepiness comes back, and then go back to bed. This essentially takes the anxious, wakeful feelings, moves them someplace else, hence calling it kind of control. Moves them someplace else and essentially protects the relationship psychologically and physiologically that we have with our bed as a place to sleep by only sleeping there, right? So go out, do something enjoyable. Don't fall asleep on the sofa. You don't want to replace the bed with the sofa. I know somebody that has done that. They got up in the night because they felt really uncomfortable in bed and discovered the sofa was amazing. 20 years later, they're still sleeping on the sofa because the sofa feels welcoming and the bed does not. So I would advise against falling asleep while you're doing your enjoyable activities. Go back to bed, bring that sleepy feeling back to bed to reinforce that bed-sleep relationship. So what do you do if you are, say, a student in a communal living arrangement, right? It could be in a dorm situation where you have a roommate, or even if you have a single room, you don't have a place that you're really allowed to go or is safe to go kind of wandering off in the night, right? So what you can do is you can do modifications to this. You don't necessarily have to leave the room, although that might be an ideal, because we pick up lots of contextual cues for sleep around us. We don't always know what they are. The bed's the strongest one. So leaving the room is ideal. If you can't leave the room, go to another place in the room and sit there and do your enjoyable activity. And then when you get sleepy again, come back to sleep. Go back to sleep in your bed. If that's not possible because it requires turning on a light in order to do your activity or to avoid falling asleep someplace else, or you have a roommate, if it just is logistically impossible to do that, ideally, if you have a bed against the wall, get out of your usual sleeping orientation, which is usually head foot, and sit in a different position with your back against the wall. So you're sitting up, so you're not laying down. So that's one change. And you're in a different orientation. There's lots of different progressions and regressions, just like with exercise. You can start at one place that's an ideal, and then you can back it up a little bit if it doesn't quite suit the context. Say you have an injury, you have to kind of work around it. There are lots and lots of different modifications that people can come up with, but the ideal is to change as many of the associations as possible when you're taking that anxious feeling elsewhere. This technique is the one that has the most evidence for it, by the way, compared to one of the other ones I'm going to show you. So relaxation and mindfulness training. There are lots of different ways that people can learn to relax. Some people like mindfulness, some people like meditation, some people like exercising, different ways of physically relaxing and mentally relaxing in general are really helpful. I like mindfulness as a tool because what we're trying to do is lower that overall hyperarousal that is overriding the sleep drive. And what happens is with all of these things that we do to quote unquote try to sleep, like going to bed early, sleeping in late, laying in bed, quote unquote, trying to sleep, that raises the arousal level. Sleep is a passive endpoint of a process. Eating is very different. So if you're hungry, the hunger is going to build, right, throughout the day, just like your sleep drive is going to build throughout the day. The endpoint for hunger is eating something. It's an active endpoint. The endpoint for sleep is passive. So if you try to force it, you can't do it. And that not being able to do it is going to raise your arousal and make it more difficult to sleep. So that is one reason why I quite like mindfulness and acceptance and commitment therapy-based approaches to not trying to struggle to sleep. Trying to sleep is the enemy of sleep. And the reason why people try to sleep is because they see wakefulness in the night as a threat. Again, it goes back to that being in the cave when the bear comes in. And the perception of sleeplessness as a threat is really complex. And I'm going to talk about it kind of at the very end. But avoiding this trying to sleep energy it will help people get better sleep. And it's something that is important not only in the night, if you were practicing stimulus control, it's important in the daytime as well. Hyper focusing on sleep, joining all the groups and doing all the things and ordering all the supplements and all of these things with a lot of monitoring apps and watches and all that. All of these are manifestations of anxiety around sleep, and indulging in those doesn't help. It makes the problem worse. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide. So sleep consolidation works with sleep drive. And this is one I'm not going to unpack a lot because this is one that's not necessarily safe for everybody to do. This is one that you really need to talk to your healthcare practitioner or somebody who can properly evaluate the situation to know whether or not it would be suitable. And I don't think it would really be suitable for teenagers because they're already sleep deprived. And one of the consequences of sleep consolidation training, sleep efficiency training, is that people get more sleepy. So the teens are already much more sleep deprived because of their social context. But essentially, sleep efficiency training improves your sleep quality by reducing the amount of time you give yourself to sleep. So you can essentially say, if I'm in bed for 9 hours trying to sleep, but I'm actually only sleeping for 6, removing yourself for that remaining amount of time, those 3 hours that you're not actually sleeping, does 2 things. It improves the sleep relationship with your bed, the bed-sleep relationship. And being more active for a larger part of the day is going to help you build sleep drive. And eventually your body says, she's only giving me this 6.5 hour window to sleep. I better get it accomplished. And what happens is people's sleep will start to consolidate. It will become less broken. It will become higher quality. And then working with a coach or therapist, you gradually expand out the amount of time that you are sleeping until you hit your magic amount of sleep, whatever it is for you. It's 7.25 seems to be the most common. I don't know where this 8 thing came from. But sometimes trying to get to the magic 8 number because you believe there are going to be horrible consequences if you don't hit 8 creates a lot of sleep anxiety and can mess up your sleep. So the amount of sleep that you need is just enough to be able to fall asleep within maybe 15 minutes. If you're falling asleep in less than 5 minutes, you're sleep deprived. So 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes is a good time. Maybe 2 awakenings in the night really briefly, but you fall back asleep and you wake up feeling refreshed. That's as much sleep as you need. There are people who are called short sleepers. They only need 6 hours. They shouldn't be trying to get 8 hours. Whatever that number is for you is personal to you. But you have with this particular method, you have consolidated sleep that gradually expands out until you hit that magic number. And again, it's not safe for everybody, particularly people with health conditions or psychiatric conditions, or people who have really high vigilance requiring jobs, which is why you should do it under supervision. So that's all I'm going to say about it. You can ask me more questions after if you like. And sleep anxiety and the arousal that sleep anxiety produces is that number one perpetuating factor for insomnia. And that goes for teens and it goes for adults. So you may have had that precipitating event, that you had that short-term sleeplessness. And because you became really worried about your sleep and really focused on the sleep and did lots of things to try to catch up and get more sleep, it's generated a lot of anxiety. And the trying and the anxiety is generally rooted in unhelpful thoughts about the consequences of sleep. This can result in people being afraid to go to bed because they're afraid of having the experience, because they've deemed it so negative and so awful that they just can't do it. And then they get to a point where they just don't feel sleepy anymore. Or despite getting really sleepy, they're practically falling asleep. And the minute they get in bed, they are wide awake. And that is because that sleep anxiety has become associated with the place that they are wanting to sleep. So dealing with these unhelpful thoughts and behaviors is really the main route into helping with this hyperarousal problem. Learning about how sleep works so that it's not such a mystery, and how our behaviors impact sleep, can help with managing sleep anxiety. Working with somebody around these unhelpful thoughts is helpful for sleep anxiety. So an example would be, because people are not very rational at 2 a.m. when they're awake and they're upset that they're awake. So a thought might be, I'm afraid of this sleeplessness, and I'm afraid of this insomnia, and I'm really upset because I'm scared I'm going to crash the car tomorrow, for example. And so you can have a conversation with yourself. Okay, this is my thought. I've had this thought for 365 days in a row, because I've had this thought every night this last year because I've been sleeping terrible all year. How many times have you actually crashed the car? None, right? So you can help put these thoughts into perspective, and the mindfulness piece can help keep you from chasing them down the rabbit hole. Instead of saying, oh, there's that thought, we become attached to those thoughts, which generates more fear and more anxiety around the sleep. There are a million different examples. So I pick them up in the language that people use all the time. Then when they use the words like struggling and trying and battling, or if they have a good night and they was like, I was victorious, it is like the bed is a place where war is happening. And the war is happening because people are afraid of being awake in the night, because they're afraid of consequences that are often exaggerated. Human beings are really, really good at remembering the worst of things and attributing things, making attributions. It's almost a reflexive sort of thing. Another really common thought might be, I'm afraid to have an argument with my spouse because I've not been sleeping well. Well, we've probably all had arguments with our spouses, even when we have been sleeping well. So recognizing that takes the power away that we give to sleeplessness. A lot of times when people aren't sleeping well, everything becomes about the sleep or the sleeplessness. And really, that is just one small part of our life experience. And kind of putting it back in its box a little bit, even though it does have an impact on it, putting it back in its box can help lower the anxiety around it, which can be really helpful kind of for promoting sleep. So if you're interested more, I promise to try to keep this short because I can go on for ages and ages on all these topics. Oops, wrong way. You can find me on Facebook. I run a CBTI-oriented Facebook group called Sound Sleep Strategies. I go in there live every week talking to people about their sleep, answering sleep questions. Tracy the Sleep Coach is my website, and also my Instagram. So I'm overjoyed to take questions. The questions are usually the best bit. So I guess I'll stop sharing my screen now. Hopefully I didn't talk too fast.
No, that was great. Thank you, Tracy. Really interesting as well, because I think sleep issues are becoming quite a big problem at the moment. I mean, we had them before COVID, but I think the COVID is exacerbating them too. And I don't mind sharing that I'm probably one of those people that wakes up at 2 a.m. in the morning and
Mhm.
fretting about what happens if I don't get enough sleep. So
Yeah, it's
I'm
very
going to
common.
I'm taking on board your advice, and I'm going to start doing that from this evening. And it is so great to be able to share this problem, because it is a growing problem. So we have questions. So if you'd like to send in a question, you can either go via the Facebook chat or email me if you want to be more anonymous. We have our first question coming in. We have the usual battles at night morning. They are swinging from the chandeliers, the children, not the parents, at 10:30, 11. And as we nag them to go to bed, then we struggle to get them up in the mornings. At the weekends, when we can, we leave them to sleep in until they like. Often this means they don't wake up before 11, 12 p.m. Is this
Yep,
okay?
that's like mine.
Mine. Get up all day. Or should we be waking them at the weekends early too?
Right. I think they're biologically going to be feeling this need to be up until all ages, all hours, swinging from the chandeliers and struggling to get up in the morning simply because of their biology. I tend to think letting them sleep in is not a problem because it's not a rhythm issue that we're going to fix by keeping a consistent waking up in the morning time like we can with adults. They are always going to struggle to get up in the morning relative to when we want them to get up, and they're always going to struggle to sleep when we think that they should go to sleep in order to get enough sleep. So I guess I feel a little on the compassionate side and let them sleep in, because waking them up early isn't going to necessarily fix the problem. Now, that if you're on half term, for example, and you have a long run of 10, 12 days, and he'll easily sleep until noon, my 16-year-old. I do start getting him closer into his waking up rhythm just to avoid the shock of it and to get back into the habit a few days before school starts again. But it's more about preparing him mentally and emotionally and then trying to adjust his rhythm.
Thank you. We've got another question too. It's just come through on my phone here. So it says, our 12-year-old thankfully is sleeping well. However, our 8-year-old is currently having real trouble going to sleep at night. Once he's asleep, he's okay. He would normally go to bed about 8 p.m, but at the moment he's still awake at 9:30. He says his brain is not sleepy and he seems quite hyper. We have tried reading, doing jigsaws, no screen time, etc. We often go up to bed and he's in our bed asleep. We then carry him to his own bed. I wonder if he's just anxious. As a family, we have coped well, I think, with the COVID situation, but I wonder if it's his way of processing it. We are also conscious that he's less active as the sports clubs have stopped, but I have even tried this week going out in the dark to kick a football around with him after tea time.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, helping continue to keep that sleep drive built is important. And I think that's one of the things that everybody's sort of struggled with. I have heard from a number of people, I don't specialize in younger children, but from what I understand, it's been relatively common for younger children to sort of regress a little bit in their behaviors during this time. And I don't think we completely understand all of why that is. We're all obviously doing the best we can to keep an even keel, like not pull the wool over their eyes, but give them age appropriate information, have it not be too scary. But I've heard this from other people as well, and it's probably part of trying to process things. Could be also just a blip in the sleeping situation. I think there is a Headspace for kids now, if you've not heard of that. Headspace is an app that I'm really a big fan of, and I think they have a kids version. It's something potentially you could try. Calm is another one. Sorry, somebody just turned on a saw outside my window here. Hope you didn't hear that.
That's fine. I don't think there's any problem with the sound. No, everyone's fine.
Good.
Okay, so the next question we have, we seem to be in this pattern where mum is the only person to settle our son during bed, and there is an anxiety if I'm not around. I'm in the habit of staying upstairs till he's asleep, and that can be 10 p.m. sometimes.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for a person to become part of the contextual cue for somebody else to be able to sleep. Even adults, if they're used to sleeping in bed with somebody and the somebody is not there, it's an important cue that's now been removed. So that's not uncommon. I've had the same experience with my son when he was little. I was the only one. I was the only one. Yeah.
I think that's why I giggled as well, because it does actually revert back quite a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Then we've got another one about gaming actually, and during the holidays, obviously children are gaming. So it says, my son is gaming online safely, but with the international games, sometimes you've got children from all over the world. So sometimes my son's up all night and then goes to sleep in the morning, and he's asleep all day. Is this good or bad, or what should I be doing?
Right. I would try to encourage people to avoid that free running. So adolescents have a sleep rhythm that's different from ours, so that lateness thing is normal for them. Staying up they can still develop circadian rhythm problems of their own. And I think that you kind of risk that by staying up all night on a regular basis. But I know exactly what you mean, because my son asks about this sort of as well. We have a time that the internet shuts off for the whole house, just to make sure that he hasn't gone to bed and then gotten back up. Because to be honest, I'm one of these people who has a very early sleep rhythm. So I have something called an advanced phase syndrome. I'm up at 5 o'clock, but I am asleep at 8:30. So he's up much later than me. So we solved the problem by turning the internet off.
I empathise with you with the early mornings. I'm an early morning person. Love the early mornings, whereas my husband likes the evenings. So sometimes the ships pass in the night, literally.
Yes.
So at the weekends, though, every morning when I wake up, I think, I could do it laying in a bit. So Saturday morning, up at the same time, bright and breezy. But the body's still saying, I wish I could sleep. What's your advice? Should I go back to sleep? A little bit earlier, you explained that. What should I do? Just get up and go with it?
So if you're up, I would go with it. If you are the advice for somebody without insomnia would be different for somebody with insomnia. So when I'm working with people, if somebody has insomnia and I'm working with them, I advise them to keep the same wake up time. If they have to set an alarm, that's fine. 7 days a week in the beginning. And that is because people are trying to catch sleep at different times. Over a long period of time, that can disrupt your circadian rhythm. Like your body doesn't know if it's supposed to be daytime or nighttime or what's going on. And so setting a consistent wake up time helps, and eat when you get up, anchors the circadian rhythm here. And then you consistently build up sleep drive. And it's just like any habit. The body then goes, okay, the sleep drive is going to build up and this is when I'm going to go to sleep. So having that as an anchor is important if you have insomnia, to kind of get back on track. But if you don't have insomnia, or if you have gone past your insomnia and you're sleeping well again, having the occasional lie-in is not going to be a problem. My lie-ins, probably like yours, last until about 6:15 or something.
If any more questions coming through. Okay, so we've got one here about sleeping in the afternoon. So
yeah,
having a sleep in the afternoon, is this good for a nighttime routine? I sleep well at night, but I also like a sleep in the afternoon. Is this good, bad, or what do you think?
If you don't have sleeping trouble at night, there's no problem with sleeping during the daytime. If you do, I would suggest avoiding it unless you need to for safety reasons, because that sleep drive starts down low and then creeps up through the day. If you take a nap, it takes a dent out of the sleep drive and it takes longer to build back up. So if you're struggling with sleep, I say avoid naps unless it's for safety reasons, and then early and short, and then push your bedtime back a little bit to kind of make up the sleep drive loss. If you don't have any sleeping problems and you wake up refreshed and you feel good during the day and you just like having a sleep and you can do it, there's no problem with that.
Brilliant. So I don't think we've got any more questions coming through. Just going to have a quick look. No, I think we've stopped with the questions here. There's nothing coming through on Facebook. So Tracy, thank you very much for your time today. It's been fascinating. And I've taken a leaf out of this today, and I'm going to be trying a few things tonight. Yeah, fabulous. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you. Bye.
So what we'll do now, we'll go on to a school update like we normally do. So please, if you've got any questions general about school, anything you like, then just send them through. So what's been happening here this week and what's happening today? So today it's BBC Children in Need, and I'm looking forward to watching this evening as well. There's a number of different activities going on, and one of the activities that we're doing is guess the LVS family age. So if you haven't already taken part, please do. I know the children were taking part this morning in their tutor groups, calculating what they think the LVS family age is. So if you take all the children from reception to year 13, and you take all the staff that are on our staff list that's on the website, and you added up all the years, all the months and all the days, actually of today, there is a magical number in the days, the months and the years. So if you want to take part, please email into Claire Gedge. We ask that you donate £2 to Children in Need with your guess, and there is a £30 voucher for the individual pupil who gets the right guess, and a £50 voucher for an adult parents who have the right guess as well, or get near enough. If we have to go to a tiebreaker, we've got a solution for that as well, but it's so random. It's such a big number. Clue, big number. Okay, over 10,000. Give you that clue there. We will find one. So that's a fantastic thing. And so tonight you'll probably see some activity on BBC Children in Need, how families are doing that. And so if you get an idea tonight, it's still not too late, because email Claire and we'll pick it up on Monday morning, and we won't close the books until Monday at 4 p.m. But really good as well. Now, the winning parent and the winning child, your tutor group will get a waffle breakfast thrown in as well. So this is a really popular move for your children. So please put your guesses in. It's really good fun as well. Really good fun. And only I and one other person knows the magic number. Okay. So we also had our Mufti Day today, and Pudsey Bear outfits. Fabulous. So here's some pictures from the junior school. Absolutely loving the pictures. Look at them. How cute is that? That's amazing. Really well done. So, and we had some in the senior school as well. And so there we go. Over here we have Sophie and Lila and Leighton. And we have some winners as well. So there's a winner in the junior school, and there's a winner in the senior school, even though it was very, very close. And we've ordered the big Children in Need Pudsey Bear for them, so they should be here on Monday, so we'll be able to give them to them. So the winner in the junior school is Ella. I've got it written down here. Ella Lovejoy Cornelius, who's our head girl in year 6. So well done to Ella. And our winner in the senior school is Sophie Hayward in year 7. So you'll get your Pudsey Bears on Monday, and your tutor groups get their waffle breakfast. We'll throw that waffle breakfast in for them as well, because the children love that too. Okay, so moving on to some more general things. Tomorrow night, don't miss it. It's the PTA quiz hosted by Mr. Curtis Nye. Now, if you were taking part in the NHS quizzes we had during lockdown, they were hilarious. And I'll be there, Mrs. Cox will be there, we'll all be there. If you be able to communicate via me, I'll be on emailing saying the Smith family over there think that the Jones family over there is cheating, etc. It's really good fun. So it's a family event. So again, if you want to take part, please contact Claire, because the books will close this afternoon at 4 o'clock. We won't be accepting any applications after that, because we need to send out the Zoom details in preparation for Saturday as well. And then on a more general update, so you may have seen that the COVID update has come through. We are hoping from Monday, well, not hoping, it's going to happen, that all the children in the school will sit down for their lunch. So because we can't use the sports hall, we are turning it into a temporary dining room. We're also putting a marquee up on the quad area for year 11. Year 9 and 10 will eat their lunch in the dining room. We've extended the lunch time slightly, so the school day doesn't change, start and finish, but it's slightly different in the middle of the day, so that all the children can sit down with and have their meal, which is, you know, as the weather's getting a bit colder now, it's better than taking a takeaway out. It worked brilliantly when the weather was good, but now we're going to be sitting down together so that they can talk properly at lunchtime in a more sociable environment as well. We've been working with catering, because obviously during COVID all the meals have to be served. They can't be self-serve, so the choice is limited. But we will be offering a main hot course, a vegetarian hot meal, the pasta and jacket potato with toppings, because I know that some parents had raised that as well. There'll be bread rolls for all children, and there will also be a salad bar as well as salad boxes that could be taken very quickly if the child doesn't want to wait to be served as well. So we're hoping that the dining experience will be much better come Monday. We've evolved so much since the start of term. We've had to be flexible and adapt with the situation, and we will continue to do so as well. So if you've got any questions for me about general school, and there's nothing coming up on the board so far. This is not like us. Come on. Where are all these questions? I'm going to just check my phone to see if I've got anything coming through on my phone. Nothing coming through to me personally. So we're going to give it a couple of minutes to see if you've got any questions. This is the time. Just to let you know, the whole school is in. We only have a couple of, when I say whole school, couple of children that have been affected by contacts outside of school. But we have no year group self-isolating. We have 2 or 3 positive cases across the school, and it's looking good. I'm touching wood as I say this, because every time I say that it changes, and it's a changing feast as we know. So I think things are really looking up. Okay, so I think there's a question coming in here. It's coming up on the board. Any school trips planned? Dare I dream? Dare I dream? Okay, so day trips can take place, and it's something that we are still continuing to do. Obviously, we can't do it during lockdown. Can't do that. Can't go out. But when lockdown finishes, our day trips will resume. But obviously, residentials is still not an issue, so it does affect the rest of the year with Lives Week, which probably will be abandoned completely. Now, any other questions coming through? It's very quiet today, guys. Okay, so I think we've exhausted today, so I hope you enjoyed the session with Tracy, and if you've got any topics you'd like us to cover, then please let me know. But meanwhile, have a lovely weekend, and don't forget, sign up to the quiz because it's going to be brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. See you.